Imagine your body as a living manuscript that updates itself line by line, not only from what has already happened but from the draft you are rehearsing ahead of time. Biology is not a passive archive, it predicts, edits, and reprints. Your nervous system is a forecasting engine that continually asks, what will the next moment require, and then tunes chemistry, immunity, and metabolism to meet that forecast. When you hold a vivid model of your healthiest future self, felt with breath, image, and emotion, you provide that engine with new boundary conditions. The brain begins to budget resources for a reality it believes is imminent, and that shift can be measured as calmer electrical rhythms, steadier heart intervals, warmer fingertips, and a quieter stream of stress signals. None of this replaces medical care, but it reveals a portal. When you consistently inhabit the sensory signature of the future you, your physiology learns to spend the present differently. The doorway is attention, because attention writes priority tags onto your internal world. Most of what your brain sees is not incoming data, it is its own best guess. Interoception, the sense of your organs and viscera, arrives in coarse brushstrokes, and the cortex paints in the details using memory and expectation. That is why stress without a threat can still accelerate your heart, and why imagining safety can unclench your stomach. Breath-led focus and slow, coherent inhalations act like a metronome for this predictive orchestra. As your diaphragm settles into a consistent rhythm, the vagus nerve sends a quieter signal up from chest to brainstem, and cortical maps update their forecast. Resources can be moved from defense to repair, from vigilance to growth. The body is not being fooled, it is being informed by your most consistent signal. Emotion is not an accessory to this process, it is the high-voltage channel that stamps experience onto tissue. Feeling states calibrate hormones and gene expression with the speed of light compared to deliberate thought. Gratitude, for instance, is not merely a polite mood. On the inside it resembles a full body, all clear, that reduces muscular guarding and grants your immune system a longer time horizon. Anger and fear are not enemies, both have kept our species alive, but when they dominate the forecast, proteins fold differently, sleep architecture fragments, and cellular cleanup crews work on a shortened schedule. When you rehearse your future health with the effect that future would naturally carry, you are letting chemistry know which proteins to prioritize and which transcription programs to unroll. This is not magic, it is messaging. The word quantum fits here as a metaphor for possibility, but it also hints at precision. Coherence in physics describes waves whose phases line up so they can add constructively. Coherence in a human describes habits of breath, posture, attention, and meaning that align long enough to amplify a signal. 10 scattered minutes of worry can cancel out 1 minute of calm the way unsynchronized waves interfere. 10 minutes of emotionally congruent rehearsal can entrain the heart's intervals, smooth cortical chatter, and give tissues a window where repair chemistry is not being outbid by emergency chemistry. The probability cloud of who you could be sharpens, not because the universe bent a rule, but because you stopped sending contradictory instructions to your cells. The immune system listens to these instructions in 1,000 small ways. Natural killer cells patrol with different enthusiasm depending on sleep depth and perceived safety. Microglia in the brain toggle between pruning and inflammation depending on the cocktail of cytokines that thought and breath helped mix. Even at the level of chromatin, the spools around which DNA wraps, meaning leaves fingerprints. Repeated states of threat tighten access to certain pages of the genome, repeated states of curiosity and connection loosen others, making it easier to transcribe the blueprints for antioxidant enzymes and repair proteins. You cannot will a gene to express by wish alone, but you can bias the traffic pattern that decides which factories stay open late. Time, in this practice, becomes elastic. Memory is not an inert shelf, it is a dynamic process that rewrites itself each time you recall. When you revisit an injury or a diagnosis with the sensory color of fear, you reconsolidate the memory as more threatening than before. When you revisit it with the felt sense of capability and the imagery of progress, you reconsolidate it as more navigable. Repeated reconsolidation is how a narrative becomes a trait. The future you is not a postcard you look at, it is a rehearsal that installs new defaults, shoulders that drop before the meeting starts, a jaw that stays loose in traffic, a nightly glide into deep stages of sleep that clear metabolic debris from the brain's glymphatic channels. Regeneration is not only cell division, it is also the restoration of rhythms that let division happen correctly. Sensation anchors this work so it does not dissolve into slogans. The future body you are calling in has a temperature, a breathing cadence, a weight distribution through the feet, a tone behind the eyes. Build those particulars. Feel the skin at the back of your neck warm as the sympathetic drive releases its grip. Notice the micro movements around the eyes soften, letting vision broaden instead of tunnel. Track the exhale until it naturally lengthens by a count or two, and sense how the pause at the bottom becomes comfortable rather than edgy. Let the chest expand from the sides, not just the front, and feel the back of the lungs wake like an old room opening to light. These are not decorations, they are the levers that tell your midbrain which forecast to fund. Thought then joins sensation as a sculptor. Language is a low-frequency tool, slower than feeling but able to hold shape. When you describe the future you in present tense with believable detail, I wake clear, my knees step without negotiation, I digest calmly, my focus returns after distraction with no drama, you are instructing the editor that works overnight. The brain will test those lines against the day, small confirmations appear, the loop tightens. Doubt will visit, it always does. Meet it like weather, acknowledged, felt in the body, allowed to pass. The project is not to silence the skeptic but to train attention to dwell longer in states that repair you. Action is the third sculptor, chosen carefully so it does not break the spell. Micro-actions are the currency, choosing a walk after sitting, stepping into morning light before screens, eating in a parasympathetic state rather than swallowing on the run, closing the day with a gratitude inventory that is physical first. Where did my breath deepen? Where did my jaw unlock? And only then cognitive. None of these are heroic, that is the point. They are proofs you give your nervous system that the forecast is accurate. The body trusts what it can repeat. The future arrives one reliable signal at a time. Even pain can be repurposed into guidance rather than verdict. Flare-ups are the system saying, the budget is still overdrawn here. Instead of declaring failure, you treat them as diagnostics, which muscle chains brace first, which thoughts sprint to the front, which breath patterns go shallow. Each awareness is a place to nudge, not to force. Force is expensive, precision is cheap. Over weeks, precision wins. Sleep and dreams complete the loop. Deep sleep copies the day's lessons into long-term storage, REM weaves meaning. Enter those nights with a pre-sleep practice that feels like stepping into a quiet chapel inside your own chest, slow breath, low light, a simple sentence repeated not as a spell but as an orientation, body, take what you need, mind, drift, repair cruise, do your work. It sounds small, but small and repeatable is how cities are rebuilt and tissues repattern. You will not feel transformation every day, some days will simply be less noisy than they would have been. That counts. Baselines shift by inches. None of this claims that thought alone mends bones or that meditation substitutes for medicine. It does claim that your interior climate decides how well treatments land, how quickly tissues reorganize, and how gracefully you adapt to what cannot be changed. You are not a victim of yesterday's data, you are a conductor assigning today's resources based on the most coherent story you can embody. The future is not a far shore, it is a signal you can practice until the present begins to answer it with chemistry, structure, and ease. Keep rehearsing the version of you that breathes like a sanctuary and moves like a promise kept, and let your biology learn that this is not a fantasy but a schedule. Begin with the superficial things that are not superficial at all, how you stand when you brush your teeth, the angle of your gaze when you open a door, the way your voice lands on the first word of a conversation. These tiny postures are steering wheels for state. A jaw that releases before you speak tells the body there is room for nuance. Shoulders that settle down and back before you climb stairs whisper that fuel can be spent on power rather than protection. The muscles of the face are part of the same loop as the heart and gut. When you arrange them into calm, the autonomic system reads that arrangement and edits chemistry to match. It is not pretending, it is leadership by example from the outside in. Ritual makes this sustainable. Give the rehearsal a fixed doorway, 2 minutes after waking, 2 minutes before a meal, 2 minutes after you close your laptop. You do not need an hour-long retreat to rewrite a baseline, you need precise repetitions that the nervous system can anticipate. Set a brief countdown, exhale long, and recall one sensory detail from your healthiest future: the tempo of your walk, the soft weight of your hands when you rest, the clarity in your eyelids when you read. Hold it until you feel one unmistakable shift: heat in the palms, a sigh that arrives on its own, a widening of peripheral vision, and then close the practice cleanly so your body can file the memory as complete. Imagination is your simulator, but it works best with constraints. Mental pictures that are too grand can become static, ones that are too small fail to move chemistry. Aim for vivid and believable. See yourself standing from a chair without negotiation, and also see the micro-choices that led there: how you breathe during the first step, the way your ribs expand like bellows, the thought you choose when an ache speaks. Pair each image with a sentence that starts with, "When X, then I Y," so the brain has a trigger and a response ready in the same envelope. Implementation beats inspiration when the day gets loud. If the language of energy centers helps you aim attention, use it as a map for interoception rather than superstition. Sweep awareness from the base of the pelvis to the crown like you are tuning an instrument string by string: pelvis for groundedness and balance, lower abdomen for digestion and creative drive, solar plexus for boundary and will, chest for connection, throat for truthful pacing of speech, brow for perspective, crown for spaciousness. At each station, pair a breath ratio that feels natural, perhaps a count of 4 in, 6 out, and wait for a tangible sign that the area has joined the choir: less clenching, warmer skin, a longer pause after the exhale. You are not forcing light into a wheel, you are increasing signal to noise in the body's own wiring. Coherence grows when signals agree across systems. Heart intervals smooth, brain rhythms desynchronize just enough to stop competing, gut motility finds an easy cadence, and skin temperature evens out. You can't manually control all of that, you don't have to. Your task is to keep sending one unconflicted message long enough for the orchestra to entrain. Track progress with humble markers: how quickly you return to baseline after a startle, how often you catch yourself softening the shoulders without being told, how regularly sleep carries you into deep stages before midnight. Numbers help if you like them: heart rate variability, step counts, light exposure, but the decisive evidence is how inhabitably your life feels from the inside. Belief acts like a lens in this process, and lenses can distort in both directions. The nocebo effect is not philosophy, it is physiology paying for predictions of harm. The placebo effect is physiology cashing checks written by credible hope. The invitation is not to abandon medicine but to give every intervention a tailwind. When you swallow a pill or start a protocol, add a minute of future rehearsal that shows your body where you expect the benefit to land: joints gliding, mind clearing, skin cooling, breath deepening. You are coupling external help to internal instructions so the two stop arguing. Identity is the deepest switch. Outcomes arrive late, identity speaks now. Instead of, "I am trying to heal," use quiet present tense lines that describe how you behave when health is your home. I protect my sleep like a craftsperson protects tools. I eat in the state that digests. I speak to myself the way I would to a friend who is learning. These are not slogans, they are criteria. Your brain loves categories. Give it one worth living inside. Setbacks are information-rich, not verdicts. A flare means an old pattern won the auction for resources today. Good, now you can study its bid. Did you lose peripheral vision before the pain? Did your breath climb into your throat? Did your inner dialogue switch to urgency words? Choose one lever and adjust it next time, then celebrate any reduction in duration, intensity, or afterglow. Progress is fractal. It shows up as shorter storms, not just sunny weeks. Small, chosen stressors can widen your window when applied inside coherence. A cool shower becomes training for calm mobilization if you lengthen the exhale and keep your gaze soft. A brisk walk becomes resilience practice if you notice the temptation to clench and decline it. Even a difficult conversation can be a laboratory when you carry a gentle posture and let the pauses breathe. You are teaching your system that activation and safety are not enemies, which makes recovery faster and repair chemistry more available. Humans regulate each other. Sit with people who breathe like a meadow and your chest remembers. Group practices amplify coherence because nervous systems are contagious. Eye contact, shared silence, and synchronized breath act like metronomes. Choose your company like you choose your diet. Borrow a steadier rhythm until yours is sturdy enough to lend. Write to yourself from the version that has already crossed the bridge. Date it 6 months ahead, keep it ordinary, and be specific. The way your mornings begin, the work you do without bargaining, the ease with which you forgive yesterday's noise. Read that letter at night when the gate to the deeper editors is open. You are not pretending you are there, you are rehearsing the signature so thoroughly that your tissues stop treating it like fiction. Keep the practice light enough that it survives the messy days and honest enough that your body trusts it. When you miss, you begin again, and the act of beginning again becomes part of your identity, the person who returns. Each return is a vote in favor of the future you are funding. Chemistry follows votes. Structure follows chemistry. Behavior follows structure. And one morning you realize the distance between rehearsal and reality got so small that you forgot where the seam was. Let your movement become a language your cells understand. Walk like the future you, not theatrically but economically, with a spine that lengthens on the exhale and feet that land quietly as if listening for the ground's reply. Joints are conversation points, give them patient sentences of motion and they will answer with lubrication and trust. Strength work can be light but precise, slow, controlled repetitions that end before shakiness turns to panic signal to connective tissue that it is safe to remodel. Mechanotransduction, the way cells sense pressure and stretch, is not a punishment, it is a message in Braille your fascia reads. When you send it in a coherent state, collagen aligns, scars soften, and the map your brain keeps of your body becomes more detailed and generous. Light is a lever that writes to clocks deeper than thought. Step into daylight within the first hour after waking and your suprachiasmatic nucleus takes attendance, resetting hormones and appetite like a conductor tapping the stand. Evening asks for the opposite, dimness and distance from sharp light so melatonin can rise without argument. This is not asceticism, it is choosing the backdrop so your repair crews arrive on time. Feed your retinas the sky and your blood listens, sleep later becomes less of a negotiation and more of a tide you simply allow. Taste can join the practice if you let it. Eat in the state that digests, 3 breaths before the first bite, jaw unhurried, attention on flavor rather than news. Cells cannot heal well while interpreting the meal as a threat eaten during a chase. Favor foods that make your next practice easier, steady energy, quiet gut, clear head, because those are votes for the future. Hydrate as if you were oiling hinges. None of this is about moral virtue, it is about building a floor that does not collapse under your attention when you try to stand still. Sound tunes the room inside you. Choose one piece of music that reliably lowers your shoulders by the second chorus and keep it ready like a key you wear on a string. Humming is portable medicine, vibration at the throat sends a friendly wave along the vagus, and the chest remembers how to open even in a crowded day. Silence can be music too, the kind that lets you hear micro-sensations you have been drowning out. The aim is not to curate a perfect soundtrack but to learn which tones place your chemistry in the register where repair is funded. Scent is an underrated door. A drop of something clean, citrus, pine, rain, paired with your rehearsal teaches the olfactory system to summon the state on command. Later, when the day frays, one inhale can act like a bookmark that brings you back to the page. Anchors are not crutches, they are handles for a mind that carries many bags. Over time you release them, but early on they let you move state from theory to muscle memory. Write gratitude like an engineer, not a poet, unless poetry visits. Thank your tissues for specific jobs. Feet, thank you for dispersing force today. Liver, thank you for clearing the night's debris. Skin, thank you for being my boundary with the world. Specificity gives your attention something to hold. Your body recognizes itself in the description and returns the salute with a little more ease. Gratitude does not deny pain, it widens the frame so pain is not the only narrator. On difficult days, shrink the target instead of abandoning the field. If 20 minutes is impossible, take 20 breaths. If standing practice hurts, rehearse lying down and imagine weight moving through the bones with grace. The nervous system cares more about consistency than volume. Like learning a new instrument, a few clean notes daily will outperform a weekend of frantic scales. The point is not endurance, it is fidelity to the signal you want biology to trust. When old stories rise, memories that carry the taste of failure or the texture of loss, meet them as you would a weather front you saw on the radar. You knew it might pass through, so you close the windows of rumination, brew a warm exhale, and sit with the wind without re-enlisting in the storm. The brain will try to finish old sentences, offer it a new clause, and I learned to breathe anyway, and I found help, and I kept a promise to sleep. Reconsolidation begins with adding a bridge, not erasing the road. Let play be part of your rehabilitation from seriousness. A few minutes of unscored movement, a sway while waiting for the kettle, a soft bounce of the knees during a break, a lazy stretch that makes your ribs smile, teaches your body that not every activation predicts danger. Humor is also a biochemical event. A single laugh unknots postural armor and floods the bloodstream with a chemistry that says, you may stand down. Seek it on purpose the way you seek protein and light. Craft an evening landing strip that your future self would recognize. Screens retreat, lights soften, a page or two of a book that feels like a friend, a sentence spoken aloud that orients the night, I am available to repair. If prayer is your language, pray, if not, let the sentence be plain. Then lie down as if the mattress were a raft and you were safe to float. The brain cleans house in slow waves, invite them with the same quiet ritual so they visit often. Relationships are part of the protocol. Have one conversation this week where you let someone finish their thought, then add 2 beats of breath before you respond. That micropause is coherence entering dialogue. It trains your tongue to be paced by your chest rather than by adrenaline. Offer the same to yourself when self-talk turns sharp, speak to your interior with the tone you reserve for people you protect. The cells hear it. They adjust the spend. Finally, remember that the future self you rehearse is not a statue, it is a moving pattern. It changes with seasons, with learning, with what life asks of you. Keep the pattern fresh by updating the imagery when small wins accumulate. What once felt aspirational becomes normal, bless it, then aim a degree further, a deeper sleep, an easier stride, a steadier focus after disruption. This is not restlessness, it is stewardship. The quantum metaphor becomes practical here, you are trimming the wave of possibility into a tighter packet of likelihood with each coherent repetition. Collapse it into your days by living as if your biology already trusts the script, and it will, because you will have shown it, patiently and precisely, how. Build a midday reset that stitches the morning to the evening without a seam. Stand and let your eyes travel to the farthest point in the room or out the window to a horizon. Long-distance gaze quiets the near-focus circuits that pair with urgency and lets the visual system tell the body, we are not confined. Roll the ankles, trace small circles with the wrists, breathe low into the back ribs, and let the exhale last a heartbeat longer than habit. This brief vestibular and ocular tune-up reminds deeper layers of the brain that balance is available and space remains generous. When space returns to perception, options return to behavior, choices that favor repair begin to feel like the obvious ones rather than discipline. Touch is chemistry you can aim. A palm over the sternum, a hand on the abdomen, a gentle squeeze of the forearm, these signals travel along the same highways that carry threat, and they vote the other direction. The skin is not just a boundary, it is a newsroom broadcasting conditions inward. When the news is warmth and steady pressure, the editors that govern hormones and immune tone down regulate alarms and extend the maintenance window. If another's hand is available and trusted, borrow their rhythm for a minute, if not, your own hands will do. The point is not comfort alone but a deliberate broadcast of safety that your tissues can act upon. Awe widens the body's accounting ledger. Find one dose each day, a cathedral of trees on your walk, the unreasonableness of starlight traveling years to arrive at your retinas, the elegance of your own hand articulating around a mug. Tiny astonishments loosen the grip of the old narrative that there is never enough time. When time feels larger, your physiology spends differently, breath drops, muscles stop borrowing from tomorrow, digestion stands up from the corner and takes its rightful seat. You do not need a waterfall, you need a moment that interrupts the trance of smallness. Language can prune or fertilize. Notice phrases that shrink your available future, always, never, I'm the kind of person who, and trade them for descriptions of behavior you can own now. Today I return to my breath twice before speaking. This afternoon I chose light and a walk. Tonight I protected my sleep window. These are measurable. The brain loves measurable. Over weeks, the ledger of these quiet choices starts to read like identity, and identity is the deepest infrastructure your biology builds upon. Pain, fatigue, fog, they are not liars, but they are not oracles either. Treat them as dashboards, not judges. A spike in ache may be asking for more mineral-rich food, less evening light, gentler range of motion work, a conversation you have been postponing, or simply another hour of sleep. You do not have to guess blindly. Run small experiments like a careful scientist and log the outcomes without drama. Repeat what shortened the storm, retire what didn't. Gradually your system recognizes that you are listening, and symptoms lose the added voltage of being ignored. Mitochondria are not inspired by slogans, they are inspired by rhythm. Feed them regularity, consistent meal timing most days, a pulse of movement that raises breath without panic, a nightly corridor of darkness long enough for deep sleep to cycle unhurried. Sprinkle in gentle hormetic nudges, cool air on the skin, a few sunlit minutes on the eyelids in the morning, a climb of stairs at a conversational pace, and wrap each in calm so the challenge lands as training, not as a threat. Energy returns the way dawn does, first as a gray hint, then as colors you hadn't noticed in months, then as a day that feels large enough for what you love. Make agreements with your future self that are so small they are nearly impossible to break. 1 glass of water after waking. 2 minutes of horizon gaze. 3 slow exhales before the first reply to a difficult message. 4 lines in a notebook naming what your body did well today. 5 minutes outside even when weather mutters. The numbers don't matter, the kept promises do. Kept promises are proof, and proof is the currency identity trusts. Once identity updates, behavior follows without constant negotiations. When you sit to practice, let your attention fall through layers like a stone through water. First the surface chatter, then the currents of sensation, then a quieter field where breath moves you without management. In that depth, place the template of your future body not as a photograph but as a feeling state, a chest that opens as you step forward, hips that glide, a mind that returns gently after distraction, a sleep that arrives like a tide. Hold it not with effort but with familiarity, as you might hold the memory of someone you love. The nervous system recognizes familiarity, it leans toward it. Let your surroundings conspire in your favor. Clear one small square of your room that signals repair every time you see it: a chair by a window, a mat that remembers your feet, a journal waiting with an uncapped pen. Friction steals more futures than failure. Reduce friction by making the next right thing visible and easy. When the cue is in your path, practice happens even on clumsy days, and clumsy days count double because they keep the thread unbroken. If spiritual language opens your chest, use it. If scientific language steadies your mind, use that. The body listens to tone more than vocabulary. Speak with sincerity and precision. I am organizing my interior so healing has room to work. I am budgeting today's energy for growth where growth is possible. I am practicing being the person whose habits make recovery likely. These are not spells, they are operating instructions delivered with care. And when the world presses in, because it will, remember the simplest move of all: feel your feet. Weight through heel and big toe mound and little toe mound, triangle steady, knees tall, spine rising as if a thread gently lifted the crown. Eyes soft, jaw easy, breath low and slow. From this geometry, choose the next sentence, the next bite, the next step. One coherent choice begets another. The future you are inviting does not arrive with trumpets, it arrives as the present becoming quietly more livable, more often, until the baseline itself is new. Map your day in pulses instead of blocks, and your biology will thank you. Work in a focused arc long enough to feel traction, then deliberately downshift for a few minutes to let circuits cool and consolidate, eyes on a distant point, breath slow and even, shoulders melting by degrees. Ultradian rhythms run like faint rails beneath your schedule. When you honor them, creativity stops feeling like extraction and starts feeling like harvest. Those short coast periods are not indulgences, they are the moments when the brain weaves what you just did into something reusable, and the body reallocates fuel from defense to maintenance without needing a memo. Treat posture like software updates for your spine. Every hour, let the crown rise a centimeter as if a string found it, let the sacrum tilt until your weight spreads like a quiet lake across the sit bones, and feel the ribs float up and away from the pelvis. The nervous system calibrates against geometry. When the scaffolding is kind, tone softens in places that used to grip by default. Your breath becomes less triangular and more like a tide that fills the back ribs first, then the sides, then the front, with a lazy pause at the top that is not performed but discovered. In that shape, metabolics change without a lecture, glucose gets spent more wisely, jaw pressure stops taxing the neck, and the background noise that made calm expensive fades. Make your environment a co-therapist. A plant that asks for morning light becomes a reason to stand at the window and let your retinas drink the sky. A water bottle within reach is a nudge to oil the inner weather. A small timer on the desk is permission to reset before you need rescuing. Friction is the enemy, lower it so the future you want is the easiest option in the room. Put a soft object on the floor to invite barefoot moments. Feet that feel textures remember how to talk to the hips, and hips that talk back recruit the core without drama. When you feel the day speeding, resist the urge to outrun it. Speed is a request for precision, not for more speed. Shrink the next move until you can do it without clenching, one breath that lengthens the exhale by a single count, one sentence typed with your shoulders down, one step taken with weight passing smoothly over the big toe mound instead of launching from a rigid heel. The body learns in increments. When increments are clean, they compound. Let curiosity replace self-surveillance. Instead of hunting for what's wrong, look for micro-evidence of coordination, a sigh that arrives unprompted, a thought that returns home without scolding, a knee that tracks over toes on a stair. Name them out loud in simple words as they happen. The auditory system is a gatekeeper for memory. Sound your observations and the brain writes them in thicker ink. Over days, your interior narrative shifts from policing to noticing, and noticing is a baseline your immune system prefers. Design a repair meal you can make with your eyes half closed, uncomplicated, mineral-rich, steady in blood sugar, and eat it in the state that digests. Put the fork down between bites, Breathe once through the nose, taste. If you can't change content, change context. Step away from screens, sit down, let the first minute be slow. Digestion is cooperative, give it a partner that is not sprinting. When the gut feels respected, it pays you back with quiet and focus, and the biochemical debris that inflammation throws into the bloodstream stops stealing clarity from your afternoon. Keep one practice that you measure, not to judge but to witness trend. It could be time to fall asleep, morning grip strength, or how quickly your pulse descends after a brisk walk. Data is a love language for a skeptical brain. When it sees lines tilt in the right direction, it loosens its grip on old predictions of failure. The trick is to choose something small enough that noise won't drown it and meaningful enough that change is felt, not just counted. Celebrate shifts, but also celebrate stability when storms pass and your baseline doesn't crater the way it used to. Use images that move, not static posters. See your future gait as a short loop, heel kisses earth, weight rolls like a wave, hip glides, belly soft, jaw friendly, eyes horizontal to the horizon. Run that cinema a handful of times before you stand up, then stand into it as if you were simply stepping into a groove already playing. The brain loves looped sequences, it can install them like macros. If an ache interrupts, adjust the loop rather than quitting, reduce stride, lift the sternum a millimeter, let the exhale lengthen, and watch how the picture adapts without losing coherence. Invite heat and cold like civilized guests. A warm shower that ends with a few cool breaths on the cheeks, or a brief step into morning air with sleeves rolled, teaches your vessels to dance, expand, narrow, without drama. This vascular cadence improves delivery and cleanup, tissues that are fed and cleared complain less. Pair each dose with soft eyes and a long exhale so your system categorizes it as training, not ambush. Adaptation belongs to safety, bring the two together and resilience becomes cheap. Guard the evening like a craftsman guards tools. Aim for light that is kind to retinas, words that are kind to the nervous system, and screens that end earlier than habit argues. Write 3 lines that tell your body what went right today and what you invite tonight. I returned to breath before I replied, my feet found the ground, I am available for deep repair. If prayer is your grammar, let it flow, if not, let the sentences be plain. Then enter sleep as if you were getting onto a night train that knows the stops. You don't drive this leg, you trust it and wake where you intended. When grief or anger visits, and they will, give them posture and breath that can carry weight. Sit tall as if dignity had a shape, let the exhale be longer than the inhale so charge can drain without collapse, and let sensation speak without forcing a story to match it. Feelings complete when chemistry is allowed to cycle in a safe container. Completion is not forgetting, it is allowing a page to be turned so tomorrow's ink doesn't smear. Return, again and again, to the quiet proposition at the center of this work. Your physiology is a budgeting system that listens to the most consistent signal you send. Send the signal of a future that breathes generously, spends wisely, and moves with economy. Send it with breath, with image, with posture, with the company you keep, with the objects you place in your path, with the words you allow near your sleep. The body will not be bullied, but it will be convinced by coherence. Keep choosing coherence until it becomes the easiest option, and the future you rehearsed will stop being an aspiration and start being the climate you live in. Teach your nervous system what enough feels like in real time. Pause between tasks long enough to notice the exact moment urgency dissolves into clarity, the shoulders sink a centimeter, the breath lands lower, the jaw lets the tongue rest on the floor of the mouth. Name that shift and file it as a landmark. The body learns places the way a traveler does, by returning. When enough has a somatic address, you can arrive there on purpose before you make decisions, and choices born from sufficiency spend chemistry differently than choices born from scarcity. Let breath be your steering wheel and your brake. A single, physiological sigh, 2 small inhales through the nose without strain, followed by a long, unforced exhale through the mouth, drops carbon dioxide gently and tills the soil for calm without grogginess. Use 1 to mark the end of a thought, 3 to mark the end of a conflict, 5 to mark the end of a day. Ratios are helpful, but kindness is the real metric. An exhale that feels like setting down a bag is the one that tells your midbrain, stand down, repair can proceed. Organize your thinking like a craftsman organizes a bench. Keep 1 tray for problems you can act on within the next hour, 1 for patterns you are reshaping over weeks, and 1 sacred empty space for nothing at all. Touch only 1 tray at a time. Multitasking is just fast task switching with a biochemical tax. Coherence is single-threaded excellence that refunds that tax with interest. When the mind knows where to place a thought, the body knows which levers to pull, and expensive background tension stops pretending to be productivity. Recruit posture as a quiet ally in hard moments. Lengthen the back of the neck as if smelling rain far away, let the sternum float without thrusting, let the ribs widen sideways so the diaphragm has room to descend. In that geometry, words exit kinder and muscles stop borrowing from tomorrow. The endocrine system listens to silhouettes. Dignity without rigidity is a silhouette that says, we can afford precision here. Feed your attention textures that promote presence. Hold a warm mug and feel the gradient from rim to base. Trace the grain of a wooden table with 1 fingertip, noticing how the microridges change your pressure without conscious instruction. These are not affectations, they are low-cost anchors that pull you out of rumination into sensation, where the budgeting systems that run repair live. The more often you visit this channel, the more fluent you become in your own signals. Invite movement that teaches joints the difference between effort and threat. Slow squats that stop before bracing begins, gentle spinal waves that explore range without ambition, ankle circles that trace careful halos. These send reliable telegrams to fascia and bone that remodeling can proceed under safe conditions. Osteocytes and fibroblasts are literate, they read load and direction. Give them sentences that are clear and kind and they will edit scaffolding in your favor. Let light choreograph your chemistry with ordinary elegance. Step into morning as if you were greeting an old friend, let your retinas drink the sky before your phone drinks your attention. In the evening, land the day by dimming earlier than feels necessary and letting shadows do some of the talking. Melatonin is not a command, it is an invitation. Make the room polite and the guest arrives on time. Turn meals into rehearsals for the state you want to live in. Sit. Taste. Put the utensil down between bites as if you were giving your gut the floor to speak. Favor combinations that leave you steady rather than spectacular, because steadiness is the canvas that repair paints on. If content must be imperfect, perfect the context, slower chew, lower shoulders, softer eyes, a short walk after to tell glucose where to go. The gut is a parliament, give it time to vote. Practice micro-forgiveness the way athletes practice form. Catch the instant you scold yourself for forgetting, missing, or flaring, and replace the verdict with a neutral description and a next step. I missed the reset, now I'll take 3 exhales. Shame burns fuel and buys nothing. Precision saves fuel and changes tomorrow's prediction. Use your senses as state switches on demand. 1 song that always unfurls the chest. 1 scent that bookmarks calm. 1 image that widens time, a photograph of ocean, a ceiling of leaves, the night sky you loved as a child. Pair each with breath until the association is automatic. Later, when noise spikes, reach for the switch instead of the story. Stories argue, switches work. Cultivate 1 relationship where coherence is the norm and borrow their nervous system when yours wobbles. Sit in shared quiet for 3 minutes, breathing without choreography, eyes soft, words sparse. Humans tune each other below language. Let that be part of your toolkit the way you let food and sleep be. Write your future like weather you expect, not a miracle you beg for. A page that starts, it's 6 months from now, and an ordinary Tuesday feels like this. Describe the commute, the stairs, the conversation at lunch, the way you protect bedtime without drama. Specific beats grand. Read it at night when editors are listening. You are not tricking biology, you are training it with consistent, embodied previews. Keep a bias toward recoverability. Any practice that only works on perfect days is a hobby. Any practice that works on messy days is a strategy. Choose strategies, breaths you can take in a hallway, movements you can do in a kitchen, sentences you can whisper in a crowded store. The future you are building needs tools that fit in pockets. And when the day has been too much and all the tidy plans feel like furniture in a storm, do the simplest possible thing well, feel both feet, find one long exhale, let your eyes rest on something that does not need you, and tell your body, out loud and without drama, I am here. Presence is the smallest room healing needs. Enter it often enough, and the architecture of your life rearranges around it until the future you rehearsed is not a destination but the way the house is built. Train your attention to recognize the moment when thinking stops being useful and starts being noise. Most problems have a shape that reveals itself after a few crisp cycles of focus. Beyond that point, extra rumination buys diminishing returns and expensive chemistry. Catch that slope early and switch channels from analysis to sensation. Feel the weight of the hips, the tide of the breath, the temperature at the fingertips. This migration is not avoidance, it is resource allocation. When the body senses that the forebrain is no longer requisitioning emergency fuel, nitric oxide rises with quiet generosity, vessels loosen, and delivery improves to the very tissues that will rebuild you while the mind rests. Use your voice like a tuning fork for state. Speak a fraction slower than habit, with endings that land on an exhale rather than a clench. Read a paragraph aloud at the pace your future self would use when unhurried and precise. The resonance in the chest and sinuses is not poetry alone, it is vagal music, and your viscera keep time. Even a few minutes of deliberate cadence can reframe a day that was drifting toward compulsion, because organs listen to vibration as faithfully as they listen to hormone. Let precision displace intensity in your training. Choose movements that load bone and tendon just under the threshold where bracing begins, a controlled hinge, a gentle carry, a hold that trembles but does not panic. Mechanosensors are archivists, they record whether force arrived inside safety. If it did, collagen lines up like well-laid tracks and the next session earns more range at less cost. If it did not, the body pays for repair with suspicion and lays scar where glide should be. Suspicion is expensive, precision is cheap. Pay with precision until trust compounds. Remember that hydration is a geometry problem as much as it is a volume problem. Water follows salt, and flow follows rhythm. Sip consistently, add minerals when sweat has been your language, and move in spirals now and then, wrists, ribs, ankles, to persuade interstitial fluid to circulate through tissues that have been pressed flat by hours of sameness. Lymph has no pump but your breath and your movement. A few slow diaphragmatic pulls are enough to remind the cleaning crew that the lights are on and the corridors are clear. Treat daylight like medicine with dose and timing. Morning light tells clocks in your brain, liver, and gut that today has begun. Afternoon light fortifies mood and calibrates sleep pressure. Late night glare confuses the orchestra and asks the violinist to play the bass line alone. Step outside for the real sky whenever you can. Glass filters and pixels mimic poorly, the retina evolved for photons that traveled an honest distance. When you give it those photons, cortisol peaks earlier, melatonin arrives on schedule, and the night regains its original job, to clean, to repair, to file. Let food be an ally to attention rather than a distraction. Eat enough protein to rebuild what you are asking to grow, enough fiber and color to feed the gut citizens that manufacture calm, and enough steady starch that your brain does not raid your will for glucose. If a meal is imperfect, make its context perfect. 1 minute of nose breath before the first bite, shoulders soft, eyes away from demands, a short walk after to chaperone sugar into muscle. Chemistry is forgiving when ritual is kind. Rewrite your relationship with discomfort by labeling it more accurately. Not all heat is threat, some is adaptation. Not all ache is damage, some is signal that capacity is being negotiated. Give each sensation a name and a plan. This is stretch heat, it fades in 90 seconds when I stay curious. This is fatigue electricity, 3 slow exhales and a lighter set will translate it into growth. The nervous system respects specificity. Vague fear spreads, precise language fences it in so precision can work. Let sleep start at noon, not at night, by sowing cues the whole day that you are a creature who can land. Protect caffeine timing so it does not chase the afternoon, guard the last meal so it is not building a fire under the mattress, give the evening an edge trimmed of arguments and high contrast light. Then, when you enter the bed, perform the simplest ritual in your repertoire, lengthen the exhale, feel the weight of your bones, and offer one concise orientation to the night, body, take what you need. The sentence is not magic, it is permission, and permission is powerful when repeated with sincerity. Practice being interrupted without losing the thread. The world will jostle your coherence, that is its nature. Train a fast return protocol you can deploy in seconds, eyes to horizon, jaw released, one physiological sigh, one sentence that resets identity, I am the person who returns. Every time you come back, you strengthen the bridge between intention and behavior. Bridges do not need to be wide, they need to be reliable. Reliability is what tissues trust. Fold awe into ordinary rooms so you do not have to travel to find it. The steam that coils from a cup, the lattice in a leaf, the hum of a refrigerator revealing the grid that keeps your food safe, all of it is evidence that you live in a network larger than your problems. Awe dilates time and relaxes accounting. You stop trying to balance every ledger by midnight and start letting some accounts resolve with sleep. In that relaxation, repair crews find budget they didn't have an hour ago. Keep your metaphors honest. If quantum helps you imagine possibility, let it point to coherence rather than to shortcuts. Coherence means your breath, posture, attention, movement, nutrition, light, and language stop contradicting each other long enough for physiology to choose growth. Twice a day for 2 minutes might be enough in the beginning if those minutes are clean. You are not bargaining with fate, you are training probability. The version of you that heals is the one you practice most often. Practice it like a craftsperson who loves their tools, and let the work be quiet, repeatable, and real. Let novelty arrive in teaspoon doses so your system learns change without bracing. Introduce a new route for your walk, a different order to your morning steps, a single fresh spice at dinner. The brain tags novelty as a chance to update predictions. If novelty lands inside calm, plasticity opens without the tax of alarm. A nervous system that practices gentle surprise becomes flexible. Flexibility is the quiet superpower that lets healing strategies travel from the mat into messy life. Train carbon dioxide tolerance as a way to expand your window without forcing it. Sit comfortably, breathe through the nose, let the exhale lengthen by 1 count each cycle until a light air hunger appears, then return to easy rhythm. This is not a test of grit, it is a conversation with chemoreceptors that set the threshold for calm under load. A system that can tolerate a little CO2 reads ordinary challenges as ordinary, not as emergencies, and that reclassification frees fuel for repair. Give your eyes cross-training the way you give it to muscles. Spend moments each day in panoramic vision, soft focus that takes in the whole room, then a few seconds of precise focus on a distant edge, then a gentle return to panorama. The visual system is a steering wheel for arousal. Wide fields tell older circuits that predators are unlikely, while measured precision strengthens attention without tightening the jaw. When eyes and breath agree, posture follows, and posture is the scaffolding on which chemistry hangs its tools. Let your gait become a metronome for mood. Before you step, picture weight rolling from heel to midfoot to big toe mound in a smooth arc, hips gliding, sternum floating, jaw friendly. Walk a short loop with this picture playing at low volume. The cerebellum loves loops. Once installed, they run even when you are thinking about something else. A fluent gait reduces the background tension your body once spent to keep you upright, and that budget can be reassigned to growth. Use micro-closures to tell your biology that chapters end. After a task, close your eyes for one long exhale, let the shoulders drop, and say a single word that marks completion: done, filed, landed. Unfinished loops keep vigilance high, finished loops make room for maintenance. The immune system reads this reduction in background threat as permission to trade patrol for repair. Give it that permission 10 times a day in 2 seconds each and watch the floor of your calm rise. Aim your strength practice at connective tissue, not ego. Choose tempos that are slower than habit, ranges that are clean rather than maximal, and rest that is long enough for breath to return to depth. Tendons and fascia remodel on calendars of weeks to months. They don't understand ambition, only clarity and consistency. When load is precise and repeatable, stiffness that once felt like armor becomes spring, and movement that once borrowed from tomorrow starts paying into it. Make temperature your ally with manners. A minute of cool water on face and forearms after warmth is enough to teach vessels to respond rather than overreact. Pair the cool with soft eyes and a long exhale so the body files it under training. Over time, the dance between dilation and constriction becomes graceful, delivery improves, cleanup quickens, and tissues become less chatty about small insults. Resilience is a choreography of vessels as much as it is a mindset. Write to your tissues with load the way you write to your mind with words. Bones like brief messages repeated often, stares taken with awareness, carries that ask hands to hold but not strain, gentle hops on days that invite them. Cartilage appreciates motion without grinding, spirals, arcs, and slow circles that distribute nourishment. Skin and scar respond to patient pressure and glide. Precision is the alphabet, coherence is the grammar, repetition is the story. Let midday sun touch your retinas when weather permits and shade your evening like a promise you intend to keep. Circadian clocks are voters scattered through brain, gut, and liver. Light is their ballot. When the ballots agree, bright earlier, dimmer later, sleep arrives like an expected guest, deep stages linger, and the morning feels less like a negotiation. You are not chasing sleep, you are arranging its runway. Turn your notebook into a lab log rather than a courtroom. One line for the lever you pulled, 3 slow exhales before each reply, 1 for the observation, jaw stopped clenching by afternoon, 1 for the next iteration, add horizon gaze at lunch. Scientists don't scold data, they refine protocols. Treat yourself with the same stance and your biology will reward you with cooperation rather than resistance. Practice interruptible coherence. Sit for 60 seconds, eyes soft, breath low, posture dignified, then have a friend or a timer nudge you and immediately stand, walk 3 steps, and re-enter the state on purpose. Life will always knock, train the return. Each fast re-entry proves to older circuits that calm is portable. Portability is what turns practices into traits. When pain speaks, sort it into buckets with gentle honesty, new and sharp, old and familiar, effort heat, or warning. For the first, pause and consult help. For the second, give it breath and small range. For effort heat, lower intensity and keep curiosity. For warning, exit with dignity. This taxonomy is not denial, it is skill. Skill prevents the global shutdown that turns a signal into an identity. Let nourishment favor clarity over spectacle. Build plates that your gut can trust, protein to rebuild, fiber and color to feed allies, steady starch to spare willpower, and eat them in a state that digests. If content is fixed, upgrade context, sit, chew, breathe, step outside after. Small context shifts move large biochemical levers because they change the interpretation your body assigns to the same inputs. Keep a practice that turns silence into instruction. Lie down for 10 minutes of unhurried body scanning, crown to toes to crown, naming sensations without verdict, warm, cool, pressure, flutter, blank. The map in your brain that represents your body sharpens with attention. Sharp maps reduce unnecessary guarding, reduced guarding frees movement, freer movement is medicine that doesn't need a prescription. Curate one corner of your room that rehearses repair the moment you glance at it, a mat ready, a window that knows your morning, a pen that doesn't hide. Reduce the friction between intention and action until even your most tired self can stumble into coherence. On hard days, easy wins are the scaffolding that keeps you from falling through. When emotion rises like weather, give it a container that can carry charge without spillage. Sit tall, breathe longer out than in, let hands rest heavy on thighs, and let sensation crest and resolve without forcing meaning. The chemistry of completion is different from the chemistry of suppression. Completion frees cycles, suppression hoards them and spends interest you could invest elsewhere. And keep the thesis simple enough to remember when the day is loud, your body allocates resources according to the most consistent message it receives. Send a message that matches the future you are inviting: steady breath, honest posture, kind language, measured load, morning light, evening dimness, small closures, repeat. Probability follows practice. Practice coherence until it becomes the easiest way to live, and let the present quietly grow into the future you have been rehearsing. Design your morning like a quiet launch sequence rather than a scramble. Let the first minutes be simple and repeatable: feet touch floor, eyes meet a sliver of sky, one swallow of water, a sentence that points your day in a useful direction. The nervous system loves predictability at the beginning of a cycle. It spends less on surveillance when it recognizes the pattern. That saved budget becomes material for learning, for tissue upkeep, for the steadier mood that lets you answer challenges with craft instead of reactivity. Keep an error budget the way engineers do. Decide in advance how much drift from your plan is still compatible with progress: a late bedtime once a week, a skipped walk on travel days, a meal that's more comfort than fuel, and treat those deviations as accounted for variance, not failure. Biology hates all or nothing, it thrives on mostly repeated. When the standard is humane, consistency survives weather. Build a small barometer practice that requires no devices. Once or twice a day, feel the pulse at the wrist for 15 seconds, notice the temperature at the cheeks, scan the belly for ease or guarding, and watch a single breath finish on its own. You aren't judging, you're reading the room. Over time you'll learn your signatures for clear mind, frayed edges, and quiet repair, and you'll intervene earlier with gentler levers because you saw the weather coming. Curate an information diet that leaves attention uninflamed. Outrage is a stimulant with a hangover. A few headlines can tilt chemistry for hours. Replace the compulsive scroll with a deliberate check-in window, then redirect toward inputs that widen perception: a long essay, a page of a book, a conversation paced by listening. The goal is not ignorance but sovereignty, choosing what earns your adrenaline. Play with time by changing cadence rather than cramming more tasks. Walk slightly slower between rooms, set down objects with care, let the end of a sentence land before you reach for the next. This elegance isn't decoration, it is a training signal. When cadence smooths, older circuits tag the environment as manageable and free resources for maintenance you cannot feel but will notice in tomorrow's steadiness. Put your hands to work on something that answers back without a screen: chopping, sketching, fixing a hinge, folding a shirt well. Craft compresses feedback loops, you see and feel the result within minutes. The brain uses that immediacy to tune motor maps and quiet the noise that accumulates when outcomes are abstract. A few minutes of respectful handiwork resets systems that talking cannot reach. Let your keyboard time carry its own movement grammar. Unclench the thumbs, let the shoulders hover rather than grip, let the breath ride without micromanagement while fingers articulate. Precision at the periphery teaches the center to settle, fine motor calm spills upstream. You'll type no slower, and the neck that used to shout at dusk will thank you by staying quiet. Schedule small fasts from inputs, not just from food. 15 minutes with no headphones on a walk, a commute without commentary, a meal with only the company of taste. Silence is a nutrient modern life forgot to label. Give your sensory system a chance to downshift, and watch how creativity shows up in the space that isn't crammed. Make a simple ritual for heavy emotion that does not require explanation to anyone. Step onto a balcony or by a window, place a palm to the glass or rail, stack spine over hips, and breathe out twice as long as you breathe in for a minute. Name the feeling once, not as a verdict but as weather, grief, anger, ache, and let the body handle chemistry while the mind refrains from writing a novel. Completion happens faster when posture can carry charge without collapsing. Track micro-wins like a competent accountant. One line each night: what you did that made repair likely, what you learned, where you returned after a wobble. 3 lines is enough. Data about your own reliability becomes belief. Belief changes how much energy your system will risk on growth tomorrow. Give dopamine a job description so it stops chasing novelty for novelty's sake. Put something you truly care about on the calendar each day that is bite-sized and finishable: a page read, a paragraph written, a set completed, a call made, and close it with a tiny celebration, a breath, a checkmark. Good. Reward is not childish, it's chemistry educated to support the identity you are installing. Let heat and weight be evening allies. A brief warm soak for feet or hands, a heavier blanket across the hips, a room a shade cooler than habit, signals that whisper, settle, without words. Pair them with light that is polite and a story that drifts rather than hooks. Sleep is not a prize you win, it is a tide you let carry you because you arranged the shoreline. Protect 1 hour a week as a personal lab. Change a single variable: bedtime 15 minutes earlier, a different walking route, a new breath ratio, an added serving of greens, and observe for 7 days without judgment. Keep what moved you toward ease, discard what didn't, and note the lesson. Iteration is kinder than overhaul and surprisingly powerful when the loop is steady. Invite community into your practice with specificity. A standing walk with a friend who enjoys quiet as much as talk, a text thread where the exchange is a single line about one kept promise per day, a shared pot of tea where phones stay asleep. Human nervous systems co-regulate by default. Aim that feature at the future you're building, and the climb flattens. Write to the body part that needs patience as if it were a colleague you respect. Knee, will load you carefully and often. Back, we will hinge with integrity. Jaw, will speak without armor today. The tone matters, tissues listen. You'll notice compliance increase not because magic happened, but because attention arrived with clarity rather than threat. Keep your metaphors grounded enough to survive hard days. Think of healing as reallocating a budget, tuning an orchestra, refining a recipe, updating firmware. Each image carries a constraint: budgets must balance, orchestras follow tempo, recipes respect ingredients, firmware updates require power and time. Constraints make progress real. And when uncertainty swells, return to a single test you can always pass. Can you soften your eyes to include the edges of the room, feel both feet, lengthen one exhale, and choose the next tiny action that favors repair? Do that, then do it again in an hour, and again tomorrow. Probability follows what you repeat. Repeat coherence often enough that it becomes your default climate, and that the future you imagine stops being ahead of you and starts being the atmosphere you breathe.